Welcome to Paranormal Latte Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Sit back and relax with us. Grab yourself a really good drink. Spend an hour and let's delve into a world of chatter about the mysteries of the unexplained. Whether you are a skeptic or a believer makes no difference. It's not always in your imagination. Enjoy your day. Now that was good. Now that was good. Good day, everyone, and thanks again for joining me for yet another episode of Paranormal Latte Podcast. My name is Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. I am the host and the producer of this show. Today we have with us Ann Bender. She is quite a talented gal, and she's been very much active in her awakening since a very young age. And in just a moment, we're going to learn just a little bit more about her. So please sit back, relax, and let's welcome Ann Bender to the show. Guest this evening is Ann Bender. Ann was raised in Michigan on her family's farm. Her first memories were not that of horses and flowers, but rather spirits and past events in the family home. Unfortunately, these events terrified her parents when she spoke of people, events, and places she had never seen before. She spent her early adulthood using her abilities while working as a paramedic and radiology technologist. When living in Washington, her nearby neighbor was a serial killer, and every time he killed, she dreamed through his victim's eyes of the victim's last moments. This drove her to better understanding of how she could help others not just sit as by a bystander, but to also understand their abilities. In 2003, she moved to California and met her husband. She became a dowsing expert and, of course, knew how to use the dowsing rods so well that not a word needed to be spoken in order to figure out what its message was. We had a lot to talk about this evening, so sit back and grab yourself your favorite dowsing rods as we go head on head with my special guest, Ann Bender. Well, good evening, Ann, and thank you so very much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I think everyone is going to be very intrigued by our show tonight because there's some twists and turns in it, but in a very interesting way. But before we get to all of that good stuff, and why don't we start out a little bit? I gave a small introduction on you a moment ago, and why don't you tell people just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just evolve it from there.
I'm an average person that talks to dead people. I'm a health coach. I get to help the living, and I help the dead with communicating with those that are living. So I really do work on both sides of the veil, it's been a long time coming to find the perfect balance point of sides, because I felt very unbalanced for the longest time. Wow. In a much better spot for my own sanity, because got to take care of that too. From my first memories of seeing and hearing people that were no longer living. And it terrified my family. And because of that, I was very isolated. I was very alone. And so I've dedicated my life, regardless of what I've done, to help others. My specialty is with kids and families. But help anybody that has needs. It could be a business that's not thriving because they can't keep a tenant in a location, and the spirits are chasing everybody out. So we and try to find out what is going on here and what can we do to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And let's go back when you were really young. So a lot of individuals that I talk with, their gifts and their awakenings come at all kinds of ages. But yours came when you were pretty young and things were happening. Tell us a little bit about your childhood or upbringing, or when you started to go, something's going on here. What kinds of things were happening and how old were you?
I was 2 at my earliest memories. And those first memories were of a lady in black that was in our farmhouse. It was a historic farmhouse. And I didn't know who she was because she wasn't family. And that's what was confusing to me. Mm-hmm. Why am I her? She's not family. Oh, she used to live here. Okay. So I started asking about it. That's when I quickly learned that when you start asking questions about people that my parents knew about, she was the original, or family members that were deceased, and describing them in great detail, and the parents are getting scared, I quickly learned that those were taboo topics, and that I'm very much going to be alone in those things. So when I was just instantly trying to find out information, because I'm like, okay, who was this? Mm-hmm. This is what they look like. This is their personality. This is what they're doing. This is how they're dressed. And it wasn't till many, many years later where my mom's dad passed, and he woke me up from a dead sleep, not once but twice, with a message for her. And it took me 5 years to give that message. Insisted I give to her, which she started crying because that was the very thing she was praying for. It opened up doors and communication. And then after that, I was presented with pictures of the people I've talked to my entire life that I had never. And I finally could go, okay, this is who you are. You are family. And that is my Aunt Dorothy and my Aunt Grace. I did meet in life, but my Aunt Dorothy, no, I had not.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I think it would have kind of. How old were you when it was your mom's dad tried to awaken you a couple times? How old were you at that point?
Yeah, it was after age 15, so maybe 15 or 16. Because I remember I was sleeping on the couch. I had come home from school and was on the couch. We were out. We no longer were in the farmhouse at that point. Mm-hmm. And he woke me up not once but twice with his pipe smoke. Mm-hmm. And very rarely beyond that time ever have smelled his pipe smoke, but I always know when I do smell it that he's there. And he very interesting times, I must say. Mm-hmm. One was at a rare time. I was listening to a psychic speak at a show. I honestly don't remember which one it was. It's been, and he showed up next to me, and I was like, okay, I didn't know this interested you, but sure it's not. He was right there, and he was watching the show with me. So,
it's interesting how. Did you have any other brothers or sisters?
And one of each, yes.
Okay. Did they ever have any encounters with anything like what you were encountering? Why do you think the appeal or the attraction was to you?
I'm the firstborn, so I was simply there first, and there was a good 5-year gap between when my sister and brother were born. If my sister had experiences, she never ever talked about it. My brother did have regular experiences, and he and I talked a lot about it. We became very interested in shows, unsolved mysteries, and from a young age. And we had the book, and he would wake up from a dead sleep. Oh, we're going to pick cherries today, and that's something. If a farmer knows, you never know that you're going to pick cherries until you go out and check the crop. There's no way to know in advance that that's the day you're going to harvest. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So things like that happened to both of us. And so he and I became very close because we shared that.
Mm-hmm. In looking back at your mom and your dad and your grandparents, of course, did you learn along the way whether or not there were any types of abilities or these sensitivity type gifts that they had that they were basically keeping quiet from you, and then all of a sudden come to realize, oh, guess what? Look who got a dose of it, or including your brother. But did your mom or dad or your grandparents, did they have any abilities that you came to learn of at some point?
My mom, but she didn't share until much into adulthood. She never shared. And it was only after I started sharing, this is why I was afraid of this. And then the light went on for her. She realized that, oh, that's that's why I can't handle, my feet outside the covers of the bed. I don't want anything to touch my feet. There were several little things that I also believe her mom had those abilities, but she very much hid it. But there were signs as a child that she definitely knew. She definitely knew what was up.
Yeah, I know from, and I'm not sure of our age range, but I do know that going back to my younger years, this was not even a topic we even talked about. This was not even something we brought up. It was either the angel, the devil, or whatever because of religious background, that kind of thing. It was up until just a couple years ago, like as I speak right now, when I was with a cousin and we were talking about what we were doing, and I thought, well, it's now or never. I might as well just pony it up. And so I was telling her what I was doing. And then she told me that there was a discussion between my grandmother and her mother, which is my mother's sister, that they felt that we had somebody in the family, even going back further, that had some kind of interesting type of psychic type of gifts or something like that or whatever, because why on earth would they have had that type of conversation if something didn't happen and something didn't go awry and come up? Because I wasn't even on the scene by then. I was having experiences, but when she said that to me, I just felt so cheated out of the discussion of that, because being a diehard Catholic, I can understand they don't want to get into topics like that. However, I was Lutheran and all this sort of thing. I was more open to just hearing perspectives, but I don't know. Did you have any situation back then in your youth where it was more religion-based stuff, or, stay away from it because of whatever? Or did that not really ever occur?
It was seen as being witchcraft, and
Yeah.
and I did have an aunt on my dad's side who I remember them talking about her like she was a witch, but she read palms, and I remember that. I remember her reading my palms. So I know that ability exists on both sides of the family, but it was so taboo. It was like you were the black sheep of the family. It wasn't discussed. I wasn't allowed to spend time with her, and which would have been amazing because I would have had somebody who understood me.
Yeah.
And they kept her from me because they didn't want to encourage what I was experiencing. And they didn't I was the one actually out of the family that said, I want to go to church. I want to see what this is about.
Yep.
And so I went to a German Lutheran with my grandmother, and later on a Methodist, as I found out our maiden name was a Methodist. And since then I've evolved into my own really, as what I believe for me spiritualism is and spirit is, and I have no disrespect for anybody else and their choice, because in my heart I believe it's all the same. Mm-hmm. It's whatever you choose to believe in. It is truly your choice, but follow it with your whole heart and be true to it. Be true to your heart, be true to your religion, whatever that choice is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can vouch for that. I have a few in my family, siblings, who will not touch this with a 10-foot pole because they're very much into their religion and their teachings and all that stuff, and it's either whatever they want to believe is fine with me. I don't try to shove this down anybody's throat. I really don't. But the one thing that frustrates me just a little bit is why, well, I don't know. I think all in good timing. All came to me just in the right timing that it needed to come, because, I look back and I'm like, well, why didn't someone tell me this or whatever? Actually, when I look back and I think about going through high school, and then of course I had the college years, which was total distraction, and then things reared up again. All of a sudden, though, it was interesting when some of these shows came on onto TV. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm not so nuts after all, but there's a lot of TV that's very much entertainment wise. But Anne, people should know, Anne was on TV, and Anne was on a show called Haunted Hospitals. And I thought maybe we would just delve into that for a second here, and then we'll keep moving on. So tell us a little bit about how you managed to first of all, get onto that show, obviously. If you can tell us how you were discovered, or if you told your story to someone and then you just fell into it.
I told my story, and that was more while I've worked in hospitals my entire life, started as a paramedic and an x-ray tech early on. It was the story I told was when I was a teenager and admitted to a hospital because they thought I was nuts. And so it was actually through what I experienced and what I wrote in the book Perfectly Imperfect, and on that episode, I realized that crazy people don't care they're crazy. And they also don't talk to the spirits where they're at. They'll point to a wall with no spirit and be talking to it. And that's when I realized, oh, that's because they're crazy. Okay, that's the difference. And whereas my spirits, I can go back and verify who they are, what they were, a name, a date, a place, a description. Mine's verifiable. And that's when I went on to realize, okay, I'm not crazy. Just because people say I'm crazy, I was isolated. I was depressed. I was suicidal. And so I was hospitalized, as any kid should be. But it wasn't because I was crazy. I had to figure out for myself what crazy was. I had to figure out for myself how to deal with an isolation in something that nobody could understand, because unless you walk in my shoes through my eyes, nobody is going to be able to understand. It's unfair of me to expect others to understand what I'm seeing, hearing, feeling. It's no different than my autoimmune disease. I can't expect anybody to understand that. I do believe it's my autoimmune disease that has enhanced my abilities, because through the pain, I go into my mind, and unless you have both autoimmune disease and abilities to do what I do as a medium, I believe it does enhance for many folks that do have autoimmune issues, be it lupus, be it unknown stuff. It doesn't matter. When you live with extreme pain or chronic fatigue, you have to do something in your mind to be able to go forward and hide the pain, as well as live a normal life.
Yeah.
So, that's me.
Well, the thing is there's a lot of people that can relate to this right now, including myself. But I do go back and I look at the time, and I do when I was younger and all this crazy stuff was going on with me as well. And I've heard the word, yeah, it's just your imagination. Quit making that stuff up. Da da da, do blah 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 blah. And there was a point where I thought I was nuts, literally, because and I could predict things, and I could predict behavior very well. And then I didn't have an outlet back then, so I kept, and I've been sharing this on many shows now and at conferences. I believed that because I had no other explanation, that it was my genetics that were just so good compared to everybody else's, that I had these abilities that, and then I started remaining kind of quiet, and then I just kind of stood back and I started observing and stuff. But I understand completely exactly everything that you said. And so do a lot of people listening and watching this show right now. They get it. They know. But back then, it was a little different. And until we had, I would call it not change makers, but idea movers, or whatever you want to call it. I am actually very grateful for some of these shows that ended up on television or wherever, to not necessarily give the answers or to explain, because a lot of TV is very entertainment wise. I don't know how they showed. I haven't seen your show. I guess it's season 5, Terror in the Tunnel, which is at a hospital, right? Are you able to talk a little bit about what they did and how they filmed you for that show?
I haven't seen the episode yet. I have talked to other people that have and loved it. It sounds like they portrayed it very well. So it's from other sources they've told me, but I have yet to even see the show. That tells you how much TV I watch. So,
well, you live it every day. Actually, you work in a hospital, right?
correct.
Yeah. And so, do you remember what your story was that you gave to the show? And then, of course, yes, it's very true. She did bring up a good point. Sometimes these shows will portray things differently than what may have occurred because it's all there is an element of entertainment. If they can't keep you entertained, they can't keep their show on the air, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, the thing is that there are some shows, though, that give you enough elements where you can start doing your own process of elimination and go, yeah, I had that. No, I didn't have that. Oh, yeah, I recognize that. Do you remember the storyline that you submitted to them?
Well, being called Terror in the Tunnel, it was actually quite terrifying. I was in a tunnel in a very old hospital, and the spirits there literally scared the crap out of me. And so I talk about how I was walking down this very dark tunnel, and you couldn't see the hand in front of your face. And all of this, going through that and coming out to this very old hospital that was closed down on the other side, but yet I was seeing it as it was. And I saw a patient, that I saw everything that was in there. And in the end, I realized as he came at me that he wasn't there, that he was a spirit. And then I saw the room in modern day, and I'm like, so it was this just total awakening and realization of, this is how I see. This is how I am. I am not crazy. I was there for another 2 months because they just couldn't believe that I was magically well overnight. But it was that moment truly that scared me straight. Mm-hmm. And how I described each part about this, down from the squeaky door that was like, to every part of being in this long, dark tunnel and coming out on the other side. That is a perfect analogy for my youth. Mm-hmm. My youth was this long, dark tunnel, and I believe I came out on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I want to go back to that youth moment here. I'm going to read a little bit about something to do with, this is what caught my eye here on your biography, was you used to, when you had dreams, or you dreamed through the victim's eyes on how they lived their last moments, that would just take an absolute toll on a person to, now is this when they're alive, or is this when they're coming to you in a dream, or is this something that comes to you and then you can see what happened to them? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, each situation that I encounter a spirit is so different, but this was when I lived in the state of Washington, mm-hmm. and I lived 2 blocks away from the serial killer Robert Lee Yates Jr. Mm-hmm. Now, I had seen him in life and seen him come in one vehicle and go in the other vehicle. And I made eye contact with him because I was out in the yard. And I noticed that his eyes were blue one time when he passed, but in the other vehicle, they were black. Black with, like you could see, yeah, it was terrifying. And it was a good 2 years. And it was 2 different victims that I actually drove out to where they were, but I did not report it, nor did I go out to the body because I knew the body was there. Because I'm like, I live next to this guy. Any normal cop is going to go, why do you know this body's here? What do you have to do with this crime?
Yeah.
So it was in that moment of realization, I ended up dreaming of a few more and ended up moving away and eventually to California and selling that house. Mm-hmm. But it was a series of events and other experiences that he was not the only serial killer I encountered. Let's put it that way. And that's where I'm trying to put everything into a form into my book, Living Through Death's Eyes, to really explain these types of things, because that's a different type of ability. That is the ability when I actually have found missing persons in other, actually as far as Canada. it's that type of ability and that frequency that I tap into, which is very different than talking to spirit that has been deceased for a while. Mm-hmm. So it's different. It's a different type of work. It's a different everything. While he was still alive, I worked for a cold case officer south of here, and he tested me. He actually was one of the original Zodiac homicide detectives working the case. He took me to a crime scene that he actually had pictures of to see what I read, and my husband witnessed it. He said at the end of my explaining what I saw, he goes, "It's as if you are looking at the crime scene pictures in detail." And there were details that I gave him, like this is where this blood is scattered, but it's not human blood, it's animal blood. It's made to look like a sacrifice. And this is it was a field that he took me to. I explained that this was a church, that there was a downstairs where the steps were, every detail of it that I could possibly give him, as if a sketch artist were painting it so he could paint a good picture. And his jaw drops and he goes, "My God." So that was his way to verify the clues. And I worked remotely with his files, and I would tell him, okay, the fourth one down on your desk, that one, not only did the corpse, was it totally burnt, but all of the evidence remaining is also burnt. There was a fire. It's all destroyed. It's not going to be worth your effort to try and solve this. There's no evidence to obtain to be able to bring closure to this case. And that's where my specialty is. I stay out of it, let the officers have a clue to go find the evidence that they need to get the case solved. They don't need to know why they looked there. They just don't know, here's where you go and take a look. Here's where you go and try to dig. I told him, I said, the second one down is here in where I live. I will not take a local case. In fact, you already know who that serial killer is. Continue those efforts, and I don't ever want to hear about that one again.
Wow. Good Lord, Ann, you must be exhausted. The question I have for you on that is, when you see this stuff, do you see it in pictures in your head? Some people say, "Oh, I hear it." Some people are like, something's telling them. Some people see things, or they see these flashes or whatever. How do you, when you're looking at this stuff, or you're sensing it out, what goes on with you? What's happening to you?
Sometimes I see, hear, feel, a combination thereof. It just depends on the case and what I need to gather to glean the information. I'm connecting with a spirit to obtain that information, or in the officer's case, I connect with him, and that gave me a visualization, or whatever details I need. Sometimes it's in a picture, and the picture I took at Woodland Opera House of the girl going through there is one of the best examples of how I see things in my head. It's not with crisp clarity. There's a lot of blurry edges. But in that case, you could see the color of her shirt and the dress, her glasses, and her shoes. And she's in clearly a Catholic uniform. Well, it was verified that the Catholic actually held their graduation ceremony there in a certain age. So in going back, whatever happened to her, she was a Catholic student that actually went through a graduation. For whatever reason, though, she still is present in the Woodland Opera House, along with Mr. Porter, the firefighter who passed. He appears in green.
Interesting and fascinating too. The one thing you brought up, which I have to reiterate here, because I have a law background, is that, and you have to remember, everybody, that people are trained to think a certain way in their disciplines or their careers. So if you go to a dentist, a medical person, a police station, a lawyer's office, anything to do with any of them, when I went through law, I was trained to think a certain way, and I'm very glad I did, because I feel I'm better at what I do because of it. But the one thing that did come up many times is, especially when we're dealing in law, was whether or not psychics could be used on the case or in the case, or if they even believed it. Sometimes law firms believe in them, sometimes law firms don't believe in them, and then there's being evidence that can or cannot be admitted into a court of law based on what has been discovered or found. And so there's a whole bunch of pieces that go along with this. If Anne were to go to, let's say, a police station somewhere that didn't know who she was, or were now becoming to know who she was, they might think the very first thing we think is, how does she know so much? She must be part of this, and she's just indirectly trying to tell us details so that way we just get this thing solved and over with and whatever guilt. I always tell people, and I'm going to teach you something, and if you get anything out of what my blab is right now, just remember something, and it's very true. In the first paragraph of what everybody says to you, if they are a guilty party or they're feeling guilty about something, the reason why will come out, usually 99% of the time, unless they're very good at lying, in that statement. So, Anne, I am curious to know, so the ones that had brought you aboard or said, okay, Anne, let's do this, did they learn of you through, they must have learned of you somehow. Did you go to them, or did they come to you, or did someone recommend you? How did you get those connections made?
One officer in Texas, was a referral from somebody that knew what I did. And so it was an interesting one too, because I said, well, you're telling me about this case, but I'm seeing a second murder with this, and they're related. Well, in the end, it turned out that there were two sisters that were murdered in two different cases, one in Florida, one in Texas, which was... The unfortunate thing was I was getting the information for the one in Florida, not the one in Texas, as easily. So that was a little frustrating, because it was like, I want to talk to the Florida cops.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know, because your jurisdiction here is going to treat this very differently, so I'm going to go over here. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I could give them some, but the body had been moved. I was certain, and in fact, when they looked where I asked them to look, that stuff had been moved. So clearly, that if anything was there, that body was no longer there. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, the evidence that I can give you for the other one, but I know you can't do anything about the Florida case. So the biggest question they had is if they were related, and my comment to them was only because they got the idea for the second murder from the first murder. That's where the connection is, which is unfortunate, because the other sister was murdered by a different serial killer. The family member that did it, that I believe did it anyway, so far has not been brought to justice, because there's no body and nothing to prove. The vehicle is still missing. And that one was a referral. Other ones have been former clients. We've had requests from law enforcement, fire, a minister, different cases. The officer that sought me out in the cold cases found us online through the website, and actually put through a request for us to come down and investigate. But I quickly found out that I'm like, why am I here? This isn't it. And so I kept questioning him, and he goes, well, let me be honest. This is why I reached out to you. I'm like, okay. Just be honest with it. Don't try to hide, because there's nothing. He had me walk his property where he lived, and I'm like, there's nothing here. Why am I here? You clearly have a reason, and he hid it pretty well. But he finally disclosed that, no, this is why, and would you be willing to give this a try? I just wanted to see if you were the real thing or not. And I'm like, that's fine. I don't mind doing whatever you asked me to do. But clearly there's nothing here on your property, so I'm trying to figure out why you've asked me here.
Probably because he knew there wasn't anything on his property, or just in case there was, maybe you would have picked up on something. That testing question. It's like we live in such an age, and probably have forever, of so many scams. And so many not the real deal and all that sort of thing. And even I can tell you, Anne, that I have done psychics now for a good 40 years. And I still learn all the time with different ones and their different abilities and the things that they can and cannot do, right? But I have had a couple bad ones along the way. And my very first psychic, by the way, was a fraud to the point where she got thrown in jail, and she was on TV. And then I was embarrassed because I told people I went to a psychic because I needed some help on, a boyfriend issue or whatever it was. And next thing you know it, she's being handcuffed and her house is being shown and she's being hauled off to jail. And those few 1% right there ruin it for all the legitimate good ones out there trying to help. So there are going to be people like this testing you first before they say, okay, I think she's pretty good at what she does. Let's proceed. So do you run into any of this confusion of your talent very much? Because I'm sure people always wonder or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's fun now to interact with them because it's like, okay, it's your belief. I'm not there to change what they believe. But how I approach it will depend if there's other people around. Who are those other people? And let them come to their own decision. And that's why I use my dowsing rods as a nice visual tool for families. I see and I hear and have that communication, but the dowsing rods will give them something visual, a yes and a no. And the dowsing rods can point to where that spirit is and let them feel for themselves the cold spot that's right there, or the change in the atmosphere that's where they're pointing to. It lets them have their own experience rather than it all being in my head. And that's why I really love dowsing as a tool for that. I use it for many different things, but to help families and for when we're doing filming, it gives the TV camera a spot. Okay, over here is where I see XYZ, and I feel this and this. Is there a temperature difference there? Yes or no? Is there, take some pictures. Is there a white fuzzy blob floating around in that spot? That's happened before too. It happened for a 4-H demonstration.
Oh God.
And there were a lot of skeptics in there, and I welcomed it. So we took the picture, they looked at the picture, everybody could feel the cold spot, and sure enough, there is something that wasn't in any of the other pictures, because a spirit came to say, hey, I'm really here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they probably loved 4-H too. I'm been with 4-H in many capacities, including running state fairs and county fairs and all that for over 50 plus years. This was the craziest thing that ever happened was when I judge a lot of photography, and so this one gal sat down with her picture, and I took one look and I went, oh holy crap, she just captured a UFO in her picture, and I noticed it and I knew it was it, and I'm like, oh, interesting picture, what do you think this is, and it's just like, do you think it's a UFO? I don't know, it's crazy, isn't it, that kind of thing. But honest to God, she was clueless. She didn't, what's a UFO? And I'm sitting here going, what a brilliant capture, but that's interesting at 4-H, though. There are a lot of diehards of the past, though, that really, this is a good program. So I'm kind of glad you brought that one up. The thing is I want you to explain, do you have, and I don't know if you do you have a pair of that, or a set of your dowsing rods near you right now?
I think I do.
because some people are learning about them for the very first time. And so this would be good to just at least show them what you're talking about or how to hold them or something like that. So.
Since I'm holding I don't actually have a setup where when I'm doing a dowsing talk, these are my daughters, by the way.
We'll use them.
I set this up where I can be hands-free. And let's see here. Oh, both kitties are watching at this point.
That's okay. It's all right. We love an audience.
Let's see here. I'm not sure.
All right. So these are a pair of what is called dowsing rods.
Yeah. And I always start by doing a quick show me yes, thank you, return to neutral, which is straight ahead, show me no, thank you. And if there's a spirit in the room, if it's a room, or if there's a kitty cat, can you point to where the animal is? Oh, really?
You must have do you have do you have a ghost kitty in there?
We have several, yes.
Yeah.
And that's actually my Sarah who popped up right in front of Tiger. And he jumped. Which is great because folks can see the animals interact with spirit also, just like with dowsing rods. So I do love that animals are around because they're innocent. They're not going to do what they're told, especially a cat. When they I don't know if you saw him jump, but Sarah jumped up.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize she was around today.
Yeah.
So jumped up in spirit, scared the crap out of Tiger, who jumped across the room.
I saw that. I was like, well, I saw something move. And so it's like, oh, okay, then something happened there. Tell people what they use or what you use or what people use dowsing rods for. Because I think the biggest thing that people think they're used for is to find water. Give us some ideas as to what people would use them for.
You can hire a dowser. Just look through the yellow pages, and usually to find water or unmarked graves, grave sites that have been moved, or if somebody's suspicious that maybe there's been some reason that they might need to look for other graves. It was common practice for people to take money for moving graves and never move the graves. That happened down the city of Stockton, actually. So you can hire one. It's all about intent. So when we do demonstrations, my husband hid a quarter in a house, and under 5 minutes, I went in and found the quarter. He's a jokester too. He hid it next to a huge tank of quarters by these bunk beds in the little girl's room underneath the pillow. But I was able to go right into the house and determine exactly where that quarter was, because that was my intent at that moment. If it's to intend to talk to spirit, it's all about the intent. They almost always will find water or high quartz deposits no matter where you're at. So whether using a pendulum to douse or dowsing rods, they almost always will cross at those areas unless you have your dowsing rods programmed differently. That's just how mine are programmed, because it does matter on your programming. Some, they will move away for that dowser. So for me, crossing is yes, moving away is no. Now, straight back, a jet, is when spirit wants you gone. Now, it's time to leave. And it very rarely happens, but it does.
That's interesting. Straight back like this?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, that's their way of saying good night. We are done.
Interesting.
If they waver, you have to be more specific with your question. They're a little confused. And sometimes it is a yes and a no answer. Again, be more specific so that you get the correct answer. I don't need people to even ask the questions out loud. That's what I call double blind dosing. I do some set, fun, silly questions like your dog is named after a Star Trek character, things I can't possibly know the answers to. And then I will, go ahead, ask your question. And then if I'll tell somebody else has interjected their question, I'll be like, no, you need to wait. Spirit or not, you need to wait. and go ahead, ask your question, so I know we get the correct yes, no to the correct person. And in those instances, I have heard people ask incredibly private things that don't belong in a group. And that's where I can go, okay, we'll do a little bit here, but if you need more privacy for this type of thing, let's break out and let's do this one-on-one somewhere else.
So I am going to ask you to do something, and I don't know if you'll be able to do it or not. I am telepathic, and I want to ask, I was wondering, are you connected with those dowsing rods that you just showed me here? Because I am, because I don't want to reveal because I've got a lot of people listening, and it will upset them if I reveal something. So I'm going to ask it in my head, and I was going to see if you can pick up on my thought, and if the dowsing rods can give me just simply a yes, a no, or a maybe, or a possibly, or whatever. So give me a second, and I'm going to, how would you like me to deliver my thought to you? Because I can focus on it right now, and all I need to hear from you is a yes.
Your answer is a yes, by the way. It's a yes.
I didn't even get a chance to ask the question, but if that's what it is, that's what I needed to know. Yeah. Now, but I want to ask you a question, though. So sometimes I use my, and hold tight for a second there. Sometimes I use my pendulum, and on one day it'll go in a certain direction, and I take that as a yes. And then and of course, then it'll go the other direction. I take that as a no. And then some days, though, it's like it goes in this direction. It's almost like, wait a minute, isn't a yes? You know how you know, show me yes, show me no, and sometimes it's like, no. Yesterday yes was this, and now you're saying that it's this. I don't know. Can you run into the same issues with your dowsing rods?
Yeah, especially I was speaking in spirit to a motorcycle rider from a certain known Hells Angels. It was a Hells Angels writer who had passed. Yeah. And he was a comedian. And he was going to be persistent and not give a straight answer. In that instant, I said, you know what? The dowsing rods aren't going to work for what we normally need them to. He's going to give false answers just to be an ass. And I said stronger words than that, because that's what he was.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that is the type of man he was. I said, I mean, it's great that you want to see this, but it's just not going to be the correct tool for this day.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's important for people to know, because sometimes you get confused by the types of things you think are going in the right direction, and then so all of a sudden they're not, and who knows what's going on there. So, Anne, I want to jump back. Thank you for that demonstration, by the way. I'd like to jump back to the haunted hospital moment, because I had a situation a couple days ago. Anyone who's been in the ER in the hospital probably knows exactly that. Sometimes it's a long day and things can happen, and things did happen when I was there. But because you work and have worked in a number of hospitals and everything, can you give some examples of maybe some of the things that you've encountered? And most importantly, what was really interesting to me a few days ago was this nurse that was taking care of me, and she is fully, I didn't even say anything. She is fully in belief of anything paranormal or anything like that. She was on target with it. And I just I didn't tell her what I was or who I was and what I did. Nope, I just sat there and just kind of listened to her, kind of give me her feedback on what was happening in the environment, so that she also recognized. So let's turn it to you. So you've worked for a few hospitals. What kinds of things can a person, what kinds of things have you experienced in some of these hospitals?
The most profound time was, every hospital has that one nurse that you're scared of. They're good. It's so scary. They're good, but they're you don't ever want to piss them off. Well, there was one at a former hospital, not a current one, that she was one of those. And she was damn good. She's the one you wanted if somebody coded or you had something really bad going down. I was returning a patient to the ER. which this hospital, the morgue was right below.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, we'd had clocks spin around. We had all kinds of different odd things happen. And I always thought the clocks were on a central system. No, they're run by batteries. They're not supposed to spin like that. One day I had brought the patient back and I turned and I could feel something going down. So I stopped in the doorway before I went out. And I see the nurse coming around the corner. And I had line of sight across the hallway. And before I could say or do or anything, something just said, just stay put, Ann. Just don't go just yet. Mm-hmm. And I watched this dark shadow come from the floor all the way up to a good 6.5 feet tall and jump, like shadowy arms reach out at her neck towards her. And she stopped. She reacted to this shadow. And she stopped and kind of jumped back and paused. And it was gone. And then she went on her way, and I went, I'll be damned. I just saw this. She reacted to it. It took me a good 2 weeks to talk with her. And she goes, I've always wanted to have an encounter. I'm Filipino. I said, well, I watched you have an encounter. Mm-hmm. I just thought a patient had come out in the hall, and I like blinked and then they were gone. I'm like, no, he came from the floor and he reached towards your neck. And it was male. But whatever reason, he was trying to get your attention big time. Mm-hmm. Did you have anybody that might have met that kind of description? African American, young, died quickly? And she goes, yeah, I did. And I know who it was. I said, okay. Well, that happened. And it was about another week and a half after that talk where a patient coded. I was sitting over in our department, and behind me, I could tell there was a lady who had wandered off from the ER, who was no longer with her body. She's there in spirit. She started ruffling the papers on the wall. So I turned, and I could see the papers moving. Mind you, there's glass in front of the papers.
Yeah.
And so I went, okay, we got somebody who's just passed and is confused. Mm-hmm. She has Alzheimer's. She doesn't realize she's gone. I got to get her back to her body so she doesn't become another ghost here. We got enough.
Yeah.
So then I take her back. Same nurse is over there. She asks what I'm doing, and I'm like, well, I can tell you your person is African American in your code room, and she coded, and she was in the other department, and she goes, put her back. I said, well, what do you think I'm doing? Mm-hmm. I'm putting her back. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, the family member was in there trying to say her goodbyes, and I got her back to her body so that, because she was confused still and had dementia, and she needed to be in the right spot so the family could say goodbye and she could figure out what happened. Mm-hmm. So it was very interesting that the one nurse I was actually most terrified of, who was so damn good and still is, really did have that experience, but she wasn't paying attention. She was in total denial. Mm-hmm. And it was in that moment, that whole thing happened, I believe, for me to watch so she could understand, no, she really does have that sight. Mm-hmm. It's not just something that you think you might have. It's part of your heritage. She needed to know that she really did have that ability. Mm-hmm.
And question to you on that. So are people aware that you work with of your abilities, and do they seek you out, talk to you at all, or do you just kind of remain quiet and just kind of, soft shoo it away? How do people react around you?
Interestingly, they either really love me or really hate me. And that's
I'm laughing with you.
I'm sure as a medium, that answer, because people are either drawn to that or they're scared by it. Yeah. And because of that fear, it comes out in hatred, strong hatred, with no understanding. Yeah. So now that I understand that, it's like, oh, okay. You hate me. Okay, cool. I get it. It's funny, even at work now, there are people who are so scared by it, but yet they'll be like, oh, I felt we were going to get called in tonight. And sure enough, we got called in. I'm thinking, dude, you're doing the same thing I am. You may be scared by it, but you got the same abilities. Uh-huh. Hello. Yeah. So I just keep that, to myself and about my business.
When you're talking about the nurse or the one that's the nurse I had the other night. She's the type of person that if things were going down, over the doctor that came in, by the way, it's like, I want that one. I mean, she wasn't taking no grief, but she would sit there and, they forgot me in the room for an hour and a half, and I had to call and ask when my CT scan was going to happen because I was in the room for an hour and a half, and all the notes that were alerting her to get me into the CT room never came to her. And then all of a sudden they just started flooding to her, and she said, I just loved it when she said, Holy Hannah. And I thought, oh God, that's the last thing I want to hear, because I knew in my gut, just by being there, I knew there was too many weird things. And then this closet door that was just shaking, like something was trying to alert me or get out of it or whatever. I don't know what was in there, but it was like, do you ever have shaky doors? Yeah, like that.
Oh. Yeah, you name it. Clock spinning, things appear that weren't there. We've been called into cases where we had nails appearing, even though the dirt had been dug down, and it happened on camera with us there. And yeah, if you say it's never happened or that'll never happen, by golly, you better eat those words, because they're going to happen.
Yeah.
No, so yeah.
It's almost like a manifestation in a way. I guarantee I will never have an experience. You're now just opened the door for about 20 of them. So, yeah, I always love it when people say that. It's like, yeah, it'll come around when it's ready. It'll happen. So, that's interesting. I've often wondered, because I know that there's so many things that do happen. Have you had yet? There was one. Oh, yeah. So I think this is a nursing home I'm referring to, or it could even be in a hospital. Have you had the phone call yet? There was a situation where, a true story, I don't know, I can't remember, long ago I heard this, where somebody had to call the front desk and go, would you come into this room or come and get me? I'm dead right now. I mean, it's just like, I just died. Have you ever had any weird phone calls yet?
I've done things where I've answered the phone, old landlines, before they started ringing. Mm-hmm. And the doctor watched me do that. And he goes, Ann, the phone hadn't rung yet, right? No, I heard it ringing. No, Ann, really, it hadn't started ringing yet. I've had other people think I was called in at 4 a.m. and when I wasn't there yet. Yeah. They thought I was there. The people who have passed, who call after they've passed, that's a pretty common one, actually.
That's interesting, though. It's just like, I don't know, it's kind of creepy. I mean, to think, oh, okay, I'm done. Come and get me. Did you say you were a doppelganger? If someone said
that did happen. Yeah. Yep. That did happen, and it was only at that particular hospital. That's a different hospital that I worked at eons ago, and that one was another incredibly active location. A lot of bizarre stuff would happen there all the time, but yeah, that's a whole nother.
do these apparitions, these spirits, from your experience of being there, do they continue to hang around because they don't know where to go, or do they eventually figure something out and go, or is it just collecting a whole bunch of confused spirits, and so they're doing all kinds of things? What has your experience been like with that?
It's very different from person to person. I mean, there are people who choose to not cross that bridge, who choose to stay. There are other people who stay to help others cross, and that's their soul mission. So, like the situation of Mr. Porter at the Woodland Opera House. Mm-hmm. I give that example because he's crossed over. He is not stuck there. However, he chooses to be there in spirit and warn others of electrical issues and things. He's there very much to help prevent another fire. He's the first fireman to be killed in the line of duty in the state of California, ironically.
Oh my.
So, I mean, each scenario, each situation is very unique and very different. It's just a matter of, you can't assume anything.
Yeah.
You can't, maybe they have a disability. Maybe they are confused. And guess what? When they have a disability in life, they still have that disability in death. It doesn't magically get healed.
Yeah.
Unlike somebody who maybe they passed having missed a limb in death, they do have their limbs back. They are back to their whole again.
Interesting.
And that's not to say that's the truth for everyone. It's different from person to person.
Yeah.
The first person to say, "Oh, it's always this way across the board," is they should be locked up, because I can tell you that is not the way it works. As unique and interesting and individual as we are, they are still that unique and individual and interesting in depth.
I have a question on personality and death. So over the years of doing this, I get so many different, theories and perspectives on what happens to a person's consciousness when they cross over. Do they keep the same personality? Or some people, again, I think it goes right back to your religious beliefs or your beliefs on whatever. And they're like, no, they don't have that anger, or that they're not mean anymore, and they're just all loving. I don't know. Do you have any take on that?
Like I said, sometimes they're off because of an illness. I'm going to use the example of when my husband's brother passed. He did not believe in ghosts in life. He's Native American, tribal card, everything. Believed in stories, but did not believe in ghosts. When he passed, the next day, he was in the chair next to me, and I look at him, I go, "What do you want? Why are you here?" And he jumps back in spirit. "Holy blank, you can see me." "Yes, why are you here?" And that it took him a little bit to come to grips with the fact, okay, yes, I've passed, but I'm a ghost now, and you can see me. "Okay, why are you here?" Well, he'd come to apologize. He had been living in such a fog the last 5 years. The whole time he was alive, he could not see. And he showed me this picture, a good Michigan fog, where you really can't see the hand in front of your face. And that's how he had lived the last 5 years of his life that he could remember. He had no clear, conscious memory of anything. And he felt so bad that he wasn't able to meet me, to talk to me, to talk to his family, more importantly, his brother, and love on them, or his niece. He never met her.
And then they come to realize
it was very different. But he came to realize about spirit while he was spirit. And it wasn't because he hadn't crossed over. He had, but there was a lot of messages exchanged through my husband's Uncle Dan and him that going forward, they had as much peace as possible.
Well, and the thing is there's some, when I ask, have you ever had a visitation from your loved one when they've, passed over? Some people may not understand or know what the signs are. There's not always a clear sign. Let me just be clear about that. The signs come in various ways. Sometimes there's not a sign yet and all that. I can tell you I've had many, many signs, including the phone call. I've had many things happen in my life, but I don't know if everybody gets a message from their loved one. Some people are very disappointed because it's like, I really wanted my dad to say he was okay or reach out or whatever. Do you have any thought process on why some people do get, like I do, I get message, all the time, why some people just don't?
I would say you need to be more patient and wait longer. That loved one is probably waiting to give you a sign until you've dealt with the death. To be honest, they're not necessarily. Sometimes they will give a sign immediately. My aunt came to see me, and it was very different. It was this gold fleckle, and I was actually doing research for a case, an Albert Fish case, actually. So it was a very opposite of, and here she is in this gold, and let me know she passed. And so I immediately call up my family, and indeed, my Aunt Catherine had passed. So sometimes it's like that, but other times, that loved one, they need that family to grieve. There's a close friend who has passed recently who is very much around, and I will not give that name, and the family's suffering and deeply hurt by her passing. And I can say very much she is around. She is around right now. But as far as giving a sign, it's too soon. Time needs to pass for everybody to grieve before and it may never come to that point where, yeah, I know her, so she'll let them know, and has already. Little signs, certain family members. But if somebody says, I just haven't received anything, wait, be patient. It might not be the right timing. And sometimes it is not our time. Sometimes it's that spirit's time. It's too soon for them. So they need time to be able to reach out. So it's not always about us.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you. And I know that when my husband's mother passed away and we were on the road to another state because we had an event that we were going to, she actually, when she passed, we had just left her, and a couple hours later on the road, then we got the phone call. She just died. He was all distraught and all this sort of thing. But it was when we got to the hotel room that things all of a sudden started to get interesting. I had to go out to the car to get something, and my ears were practically blasted out with absolutely piercing Silent Night was the music. It was just so ungodly. And so anyway, I went back in. I said, I don't know who's playing things right now in Silent Night. And he goes, that was my mother's favorite song. And I was delirious and dizzy and all this. And I, putting two to two together, that was her giving me the sign that she was okay. She made it so I could relay it because he was distraught. And I said, she's okay, obviously, because she came to me because obviously I'm a beacon, and, everybody wants to give their message to me so I can relay it to them. But that is very true. Sometimes another person gets the message for the person. So it just all depends, right? And I was going to ask about this one thing we were talking about before the show, and it's up to you if you want to talk about it. It goes back to the haunted hospitals segment, and I think you might have mentioned there was another segment that was possibly in the pipeline at the time or whatever. Did you want to talk about that interesting story or not, or do we want to save it for another time?
Oh, I actually mentioned it. That was where I was, watching this dark shadow come out.
Oh, the shadow come out of there. That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to ask you about that, though, I'm glad you brought that. Was the shadow trying to hurt that person, or alert? What going for? I mean, what strangle, or what was the intent? Do you think of that dark shadow that came up like that? And what do you think the intent was?
He was angry. He was very angry, and he didn't understand why she wouldn't let him live. He thought she had not. And I'm going, if there's ever a nurse to give anybody every chance possible, I know she did. And then, so that's what I'm thinking of while I'm watching this go down, and I could feel the anger, and I'm like, dude, she did everything. I know she did everything.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And when I had that thought, poof, he was gone.
Huh. That's interesting.
It was like, oh. I'm like, that is not the person to be angry at.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the person everybody wants there. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I mean, the thing is that I've heard of these things all the time. I've heard of even dark shadows. People have noticed crossing from one area, going into a room, and people saying, "Oh, so and so is dying tonight," or something, because it's like I don't want to call it the shadow of death, but that there's all kinds of weird things that people have seen, and I just can't imagine. I don't know if you ever grow cold to that. Do you ever really grow cold to that at all, or is anything as startling as the next thing when something happens, or it's like, oh, here we go again? How do you receive that for yourself?
Well, the biggest thing I let folks know, as far as just because a shadow is dark, a shadow could be white, it could be any color. Don't let the color construe good or bad. Mm-hmm. It's just an absence of light. It's just how that is presenting. When I see it, I usually go, oh, that's interesting. And then my next question is, all right, is there anything I need to do? Mm-hmm. Is there any part, or is it just for me to stand back and, okay, let's let this happen, and this isn't my place to say or do anything? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's like that. I quickly have learned that it is not always my place to say anything. Sometimes I need to just be present, be still, and put a gentle hand on somebody to let them know I'm there.
Wow. No, that's nicely said, Anne. I was just trying to find the right words here that was a nice ending. I mean, that's great. We'll have you back again at another point. This is really good. Give us an idea if people want to reach out, talk to you, and all this sort of thing. Now, I have to clarify something. You need to clarify something. The demonstration that we just did a few minutes ago, I'm not sure if she does psychic readings or anything like that. So why don't you tell people kind of what you do, what they can reach out for, and we'll go from there.
I do psychic readings, yes, but I do them for donation to support the feral animals of our community. Or if you have an animal organization, horse foundation, some type of organization, a nonprofit, 501c3 that you want to donate to for the services of my reading, I'm happy to. I earn a great living. I don't do a ton of readings because I do it for donation and to self-preserve. Mm-hmm. But it's always for donation because for me personally, I do not feel that taking money for that as it is a gift to me. That is my gift to help the furry communities or lizards, snakes. I'm not, just if you don't have fur, I will still support you. Mm-hmm. But you can reach me through the website, through on Facebook under Classy Ann. My name is Ann Bender. Mm-hmm. And when you need me, I will be there. I schedule things only on my days that are off, so that I have my full focus and my full attention. And yeah, that's a little bit about us. I do not take more than one missing person cases. So if I'm working on one, I don't take any other. Right now I have my docket is clean. It's wonderful. So I am able to take a case, mm-hmm. but I only do them one at a time. Mm-hmm.
And also, I think you have, do you know if that book that you have a chapter in on Amazon, do you know if that's still existing, and if it's still on Amazon? And it's called Perfectly Imperfect.
Yes, and there also is a second version to that where other ladies, not just health coaches, these are ladies that have lived rough lives, and they are there to share their stories, and some of them can be trigger warnings for folks. But it is there to show that, that mountain may be there, regardless of what it is, but it can be overcome. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and the view is great when you get to the top of the mountain. And that's what that book is for. It's a series of different women. Nobody's making money off of those books. None of us are. And it is purely out there to help.
No, sounds good. And I'll have all this in the show notes so people can rewind and collect this information and all that. But again, we'll have to have you back. And Anne, really great job today. Very interesting. And thank you very much again.